Hey everybody, welcome back to the NerdNest. I'm Bill, and today I'm joined by Russ and Rich, if I can keep them straight, although it should be easier because, guys, we just got to hang out in, like, real life, didn't we?
We sure
It's
did.
true. I think
Yeah.
we saw the differences, like, in real life, like, that Rich is taller than us by, like, an inch, and that was a big deal.
Everybody was posting that comment that Russ is the tall, or Rich, son of a bitch, that Rich is.
Only took 40 seconds.
All I had to do was make a joke that I would mix them up, and I mixed them up. Everybody was making that joke or that observation that Rich is the tallest one, and I'm looking at your camera right now. We determined that it was because you keep your camera above your monitor. Did you move
I
your
lowered
camera?
It some. I did.
Okay.
Yeah. Specifically for this reason, I moved it down some.
Yeah,
Well, I
nice.
angled it down some.
Very good. All right, so now you know. Like Russ and I should squat down just a little bit so that Rich is a little bit taller. But we did meet in person, and we did like record the whole thing. I'm waiting to get those files back from Too Many Games because we had a live panel with a live audience. It was everybody on the podcast plus Bob Wolf joined us. It was really, really fun. And as soon as I get those files from Too Many Games, I will post them on the Patreon feed, on the YouTube channel, on the regular feed. It'll be like an extra episode whenever those come in. So you guys can look forward to that. But we have a lot of stuff to cover today, although I do feel like we're going to hit this wall in the news, this summertime news wall where there won't be nearly as much stuff to talk about. But right now I feel like we've got a good chunk of things to discuss. And I wanted to start things off with the Steam Summer Sale because that's going on right now through, I believe, the 11th, right?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so
just a
it's
few
going
more
on
days.
through the 11th, and I said, hey guys, can we all come up with games that we either picked up on the sale or games that we already have that are on sale right now to recommend to people. And Russ, I'm going to have you go first. What games did you pick up on the Steam Summer Sale, or at least one of them, and then we'll ping pong around?
Yeah, there are a ton of games that are like under $5, so I picked up a bunch of those, mostly to just like fill out my catalog because maybe I had them on GOG or I had them already on Switch. So stuff like Limbo, for 99 cents, things like that.
Ooh.
Celeste is $3, which is crazy. But I picked up...
It's $1.99, I think.
Oh, is it? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's so insane. The game is worth $50,
Yeah.
Anyway. So the one that I spent the most on was a whole whopping $10, and it was Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning, which is like a pretty old game that was remade like in 2020. It's an action RPG, and I still haven't played it yet, but I decided to add it because I feel like there's still a large fan base for it, and a lot of people ask me to like benchmark it with lower end stuff, and I was like, okay, for $10, it seems like a reasonable time to actually try this out. It usually is $40, so it's 75% off during the Steam sale, and I was like, okay, this is a perfect time, $10 to kind of check this out. So I still haven't played it, but I've heard a lot of things. Like I have certain friends who that is their like comfort game, like they go back to that one and just it's kind of like, I don't know, Monster Hunter for Bill kind of thing, where it's just like time to jump in and have a little bit of time with like a beloved favorite. I don't know if I'll get that same experience when I actually try it out, but it'll be good for benchmarking at least.
Is that the game that was like there's a baseball player involved and there was like the state of Rhode Island kind of helped bankroll that game and then it didn't do so hot?
Oh, that dude, Kurt Schilling?
Yeah. Kurt Schilling. Isn't that the Kurt Schilling game?
Oh, I don't know. I
think you're right.
Like literally no. Like I was calling it Amalur or Alamur before like 10 minutes ago. Now I'm calling it Amalur correctly. So let's look up Kurt Schilling game.
Yeah, so my recollection is that this game somehow the state of Rhode Island ended up like helping to bankroll this game based on the fact that it was being made by this famous baseball player. I should get points for knowing that it was a baseball player because sports,
This is pretty amazing.
Yeah, thank you. And then I guess the game either was real bad or didn't come out or something like that. And then like Rhode Island was like the governor of Rhode Island was like talking about this game and how it didn't meet sales expectations or something. Am I remembering that right, Rich?
Yeah, you're right. So they took a huge loan, and then they went bankrupt in 2012. The studio did. With debts over 150 million. And then I'm assuming, I don't know what happened after that. I think THQ is the one who originally, who actually published it. So maybe they picked it up afterwards.
Okay.
That's so strange. It's such a strange story.
It really is. I would
didn't know
like
any
to
of that
see a
stuff.
no clip
I just
on that.
bought it for benchmarking.
You bought it for benchmarking, you
That's
said?
I just bought it for benchmarking. I didn't know I had a history of any of that stuff. Anyway, $10. That's what I spent it on.
All right. Well, nice. Rhode Island thanks you for your donation, Russ. Rich, what's one of the games that you picked up on sale?
Yeah, so, I picked up some really weird stuff. Like, I picked up, Tome, which is, a photography sort of adventure game, like black and white, isometric kind of thing. So I haven't gotten into that yet. The game I wanted to recommend was Celeste. That's just because if you haven't played it, you really should just get it, especially at $1.99. Just go get that game. But what I will, because I think a lot of people do own that game, what I will recommend instead is Talos Principle 2. It's down to $20. It's a first-person puzzle game like The Witness or like the original Talos Principle. And yeah, I just find these games, I find these two first-person puzzle games to be the best in the genre, probably better than The Witness to me. So if you like that sort of game, I would definitely recommend picking it up.
You're always talking about flick stick, and Talos Principle 2 is a first-person game. Do you think that that's the right kind of game to learn flick stick on?
That's a good question. I haven't tried it. I think I see where you're going, right? It's slower paced, so it could make for a good way to learn it without having to deal with the fast-paced nature of an actual shooter. So I haven't tried it, but I would venture to say yes.
Awesome. So for the sale, I ended up picking up 2 games, and then I found a game that was on sale that I already owned that I absolutely adore. The game that is on sale, and I forgot how much it's on sale for, so I'm going to try and look that up while I'm talking, but is called Xenotilt, and Xenotilt is this, it's an early access right now, and I'm typing it into Xenotilt. I'm typing it into my browser right now. It's currently $12, and it is absolutely worth $12. It's in early access. It's 20% off, and it's a pinball game. But one of the cool things about it, first off, looks absolutely gorgeous on the OLED Steam Deck because it's a lot of bright colors and dark backgrounds, so it just really, really pops off the screen. Although I prefer to play it on my TV because I like the bigger screen. It's a little easier to follow the ball. But you are essentially playing a pinball game. But you have 3 levels to it. There's a top level that's where, that way up at the top. But if the ball falls down, you're then in the medium level. And if you hit the ball to the right spot, it'll go back up to the top level. And if it falls through the medium level, you're down to the bottom level. But the thing that's really cool about it is you have abilities that you can gain as you play, because if the ball goes into a certain spot, you can then sometimes, depending on which way that you're playing, you can control where it's going to land. And based on where it lands, you can okay, I want more multipliers on this, or that kind of thing. And then you also have guns. And the way that the guns work is you've got your little flipper that moves, and if you catch the ball in the flipper and just kind of hold it there and then pull down on the joystick, the guns come out and they start shooting all of the enemies that are floating around on the pinball board while you're playing. It's really, really fun. It's it is almost an exact duplicate of Demon's Tilt, which is another game from the same publisher or same developer. And the difference is that this one is alien themed and Demon's Tilt is, demon themed, but they're both really, really good, and they're in this one's in early access. Absolutely, you got to buy it if you don't have it. Really, really fun, palate cleansing kind of game. And then the games that I ended up picking up that were on sale, one of them is on the screen behind me. I don't know if anybody can see it. One of them is on the screen behind me if you're watching this over on YouTube, and that is the original Resident Evil like I think it's called Biohazard Edition or whatever, where they've kind of upscaled like the character models and stuff like that. I picked that up. I'm probably about a half an hour into it so far because I've never played the original Resident Evil outside of like being at somebody's house and just messing around with it for a little bit. It has updated controls, or you can go back to like the tank controls if you want. That's really cool. And then everybody on the podcast yelled at me for not owning the original Doom on Steam because I played the original Doom, you know, on friggin' discs back in the day. So I never bought it, but it was on sale, and so I ended up picking up the original Doom, and I was playing it over on my TV yesterday, you know, with an Xbox controller, and I actually spent like 2 hours just roaming. Like I was
so damn well.
It really does. And I was listening to a podcast, and I wanted to play a game so I could listen to something else and not have like dialogue at the same time. Which is why I haven't put too much time into Resident Evil. But Doom holds up incredibly well, and it's just really, really fun.
I'd argue the fuller game holds up better than Doom 2. Like, Doom 2 has some, like, outdoor sections that are just like, it's fine. At least for me. I'm sure there are people out there that love that stuff. But, like, you're in, like, you know, New York City or whatever it is. In Doom 2, and I like to skip over those, but every single level of Doom 1 is amazing.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention for I keep forgetting Xenotilt. I want to say Demon Tilt. For Xenotilt, if you play that on the Legion Go, I haven't played this on the Legion Go, but I did play Demon's Tilt. You can theoretically use the Joy-Cons and stand the tablet up and play. You know, Tate mode, vertical mode. So I tried that with Demon's Tilt. It's a little janky, but it works. So something to try out.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I'm going to have to try that. You know, you brought up the Legion Go, and I happen to have it here on my desk. And the reason I have it on my desk is because I don't know how to say it. JSOX or JSO. They sent me one of these. You know how they send stuff. They sent me one of these things for the Legion Go. And for the audio listeners, I'm just going to have to try and describe it to you. But it's a controller clip that's a magnet. And they just magnetize together. And so then you have a controller right here. Or if you want, you can split them apart and hold them in either hand. So basically, if you think of the Nintendo Switch, the Joy-Con rails that came with the Nintendo Switch, it's kind of like those. They had little straps that I ended up unscrewing this whole thing and taking the straps off because I'm not using this, like, I'm not waving it around, so I don't need it. And then I put it all back together, and they just snap right onto each of the controllers, and they give you like this little lip that your fingers rest against. It's really actually pretty comfortable. And then if you just want to store your controller, you just hold them together like that. I think that this is fantastic. What I would say that JSOX or JSO, I don't know how to say it, what they ought to do is they ought to make one of these that's like a triangle so that these are at an angle instead of just flat like that. That would be really, really good. But I thought that was cool. They're not paying me or anything. I just thought it was neat. In fact, it sat here on my desk for like a couple weeks before I actually got around to actually opening it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. You know,
that is cool.
Russ, I ended up buying those clips that go on there. And now that I think about it, I don't think that they're compatible with that. So you probably don't want to use this. But it's kind of neat. And I just thought I would share that. Anything else from the summer sale?
One last thing from the sale is that most of those Adult Swim games, right? They got the ownership transferred to the original devs, which is great. But I believe there are some that did not. And so this is going to be the last sale for them. If I'm getting the names right, one is Super House of the Dead Ninjas, which I really enjoy. Another is Zenzi Zenik, which I bought but I haven't tried. I think what's the other one here? Mega Coin Squad. So at least 3 games there that I think this is the last time they'll be on sale on Steam. You know, and I can give those to you, Bill, so you can put them in the show notes.
Yes, thank you. Since you brought up other things that are on sale, I don't know if you remember this, but I believe it was like episode 1 of the NerdNest podcast, and you recommended a game called Luck Be a Landlord. That's also
Yes.
on sale right now. I didn't pick it up because I had already bought a couple games, and I was like, I don't really need another one. But that's on sale right now.
Have either of you connected the dots on that? Because I've mentioned it before, but I don't know if Luck Be a Landlord is pretty much the progenitor to Balatro.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't.
Balatro is the spiritual successor to Luck Be a Landlord.
Okay, I did not realize that. Well, now I'm more interested in it than I was before because it just looked like a match 3 game.
Yeah, it's a roguelike deck builder, and it shares a lot of the same mechanics that Balatro does. Balatro is a lot more refined now, having been inspired by Luck Be a Landlord and coming out 1.5 to... Really, it came out a few years later because Luck Be a Landlord had been on itch.io prior to Steam. But yeah, either way, definitely check it out.
Very cool. All right, let's move on to news topics. One of the things you said, Rich, that you had a topic that you wanted to talk about when it came to accessibility. And there's been a lot of discussion on Twitter and threads and just forums and Reddit and stuff about Elden Ring coming out and the fact that you cannot pause it. So Alana Pierce, also known as Charlanazard on YouTube, I believe she works for Sony Santa Monica as well. She was talking about it, and she said, you know what, Rich, can you pick up that thread? Because I don't remember exactly what she said.
So, yeah, because also a lot of what she said pretty much got misconstrued immediately, right? I was
on the internet?
Lucky and... Right? Do you believe it? Lucky enough, I happened to have watched that video like pretty much as soon as it came up. So I saw that video before any of the discourse. What she said, there were basically 2 parts to the video. One part was about basically how Elden Ring doesn't need an easy mode, and that essentially people just need to get good, right? Like she said it sort of ironically. And this is about the Shadow of the Erd Tree DLC, but essentially that there are a bunch of things in the Shadow of the Erd Tree DLC that are meant to make the experience easier. You just haven't found them yet, right? And, she made this video I think about a week after the DLC was released. So, I mean, like, a lot of people that are complaining about the difficulty, like, you're complaining about it within, like, days of having played it, right? So, like, what have you really given a try so far? So half of the video was pretty much just dedicated to just there are ways to make this game easier and you're not exploring them. So, try to explore them. The second half was about accessibility and just how important accessibility is in general. One of the, I think she said it in that video, but one of the things to keep in mind, right, is that even if you don't care about accessibility today, you almost inevitably will at some point, right? Like, in some way you will almost inevitably care about accessibility and it will be important to you. The thing that got misconstrued a bunch was she mentioned 3 pillars of accessibility: permanent disability, temporary disability, and situational disability. So permanent disability, you've lost your arm, right? And there's this Microsoft graphic out there that accompanies this very well. So I'll find that, I'll link it in the show notes, or I'll give it to Bill to link in the show notes. Permanent disability, you've lost your arm. Temporary disability, you've broken your arm, right? Situational disability, you have a small child that you have to, take care of, right? So like all of a sudden you have to grab them before they, stick their finger in a power outlet or something like that. That she referred to as a situational disability. And in this Microsoft graphic, there are other similar things. So having a newborn baby, that's a situational disability. Being a bartender, thank you, Russ, for sharing that. Being a bartender, you're not going to be able to hear things, so you have a situational disability. And so essentially she said, if you have a small child, it would be very, very helpful to have a pause button. And, I think at least 2 of us here agree. So like, it would be nice, right, to have a pause button.
Yes.
So I'll pause there. I have other thoughts, but I'll pause there in case you guys wanted to chime in on that.
I will add that in the heyday of Destiny, when I was playing it a lot, my wife learned like that there were games that didn't pause, and she'd be like, "Oh, is this a game you can't pause?" Because like that was like part of it. Like, hey, can you help me with this thing? I'm like, oh, I can't pause. Like because Destiny was the same way because obviously it was online, and so
Right.
I get that. The lack of a pause does make things difficult when it comes to just kind of being able to set the game aside, engage with real life, and then come back to your magical creation world. And I can definitely see that as an issue.
I don't like you use the word difficult, and I don't think it makes it more difficult. I think it makes it annoying. And that's like people, the Elden Ring community and the From Software like stands, I guess. The people who are like, From Software, they're the best. I love Miyazaki. Gonna do a cartwheel. Like those guys, they're always like, this game needs to be the hardest it can possibly be. Okay. The lack of a pause button doesn't make it more hard. It doesn't make it more difficult. It just makes it annoying.
Yeah. So this is where I would argue, right? The Souls games have gotten more accessible. So like part of the thing here is that if someone is asking for a pause button, one of the things you could do as a designer is you can give them a pause button, right? But another thing you could do is just come up with other ways that help alleviate their problem. And so that's not to say that those people don't still want a pause button. Like, Bill, I talked to you about this and you're like, yeah, that's all great, well and good, but I still want a pause button, right? But like over time, if you die in Elden Ring, it's so much easier to like run back to where you lost your souls. What are they in Elden Ring? Whatever.
Runes?
Doesn't matter.
I die so much I don't even try to go find them.
I think they're called runes.
Okay, runes. It's so much easier in Elden Ring than in Dark Souls 1 to go back to where you lost your souls, your runes, and get them back. And that is something that was made more accessible, right? Like that is a form of addressing accessibility. Likewise, they didn't add an easy mode, but they added ranged combat. They added magic, right? Like magic existed from the beginning, but like there are a lot more viable options for easier combat. Not to mention, right, like the summons and things like that. Like this game is the easiest of the Souls-likes from Software, and it's also the most popular. And I don't think that's a coincidence.
I don't think that's a coincidence either. Go ahead, Russ.
I was just going to say, to be devil's advocate, there is a certain level of immersion that happens when you don't have the ability to pause. When you're like, oh crap, like I have to address this right now. Like I'm already exhausted from the last encounter, but now I've got another one. Like that is like a moment where you're like, oh, this is like just more immersive. Like you're actually that character kind of thing, And so I get that feeling. But yeah, if it was just, okay, you can go into the options, go into accessibility, and then turn on whether or not you want to have the pause button. Like that would kind of make it for both, And it's so weird, the gatekeeping with this game in particular. Like I see things where people will accomplish something and then people will comment and say, well, you didn't do it right because you used this potion or whatever. And it's like, come on, man. Let people play the game that matches them the best, And I don't know.
I can see somebody using like modding the game and using that as a crutch to defeat a boss or whatever, and then somebody saying, well, you know what, you didn't beat it the way that the developers intended for you to beat it. Sure, that's fine, but the developers put that potion in the game, that Russ is saying. The developers put the bleed effect in the game to make it so that, okay, you know what, I suck at getting in there and knowing when I can hit 2 or 3 hits or when I can only do like a jump attack and then dodge out, So I'm going to use bleed so that I can hit them once, run away, and watch their health slowly fall down or something like that.
Sure.
The developers put all of that stuff in the game. So if you're using the things that are built into the game, that is absolutely not quote unquote cheating, as a lot of people will say.
It's like Tears of the Kingdom. You know, like it's like you got so many different ways you can finish that puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it the way the developer intended, which who knows, you know, or you can actually just do it your way, you know, and I mostly would do it my way. It's very similar. It reminds me again of Last of Us Part 2. Like that game has a ton of accessibility options. I loved all of that stuff because it allowed me to curate the game to meet my specific use case and needs. Like when I was playing that game in 2020, I was so rusty with video games in general. I hadn't played in so long, but the pandemic gave me a bunch of time, you know, and I turned on a bunch of accessibility stuff to make it so that I could get through the game in a single playthrough without stressing out too much, without putting it away. Like I never finished Last of Us Part 1 because it was so hard, you know, and so grueling. And I was able to have the game meet me, which was amazing, you know. And sure, I probably didn't play it the way the developers intended or how, you know, people would expect me to play it. But holy crap. Every time I would get past a part, I had the same feeling of elation that somebody else would when they got good and did it. You know what I mean? Like it still felt awesome, and I have these wonderful memories of that game. And sure, I cheated the heck out of the way through it, if you would consider it that way. And so, yeah, I'm all about accessibility and letting games kind of meet people halfway. So,
Heck yeah.
I saw a lot of people saying things about this discourse, and they were saying things like certain games aren't for everyone. I'm like, that kind of, and as the, you know, the term that you used, gatekeeping, is some of the worst stuff that's out there. I just can't stand that. And of course, there will be somebody who loves Elden Ring, and they will say, well, if you go into the menu and bring up the menu explanation button or something, that does pause the world. Or if you're playing on console and you go back to like the home screen, that does pause the world. All of those things are valid points, but my argument is to the people who hate the idea of a pause button being in the game, just don't use it. And like, I want the game to be more accessible so that more people would want to experience it. I was actually playing it this morning, and I was playing a little bit, and I was like, shit, I don't remember how to play, because it's been months and months and months since I played. So like, I'm drinking flasks left and right because I don't know which button does what. Like I was just trying to cast a damn spell, and I'm like, that's the wrong button. So I wasted a bunch of flasks, but I ended up finding a boss, defeating the boss, and I was like, okay, that was cool, because when I first fought the boss, he handed me my ass, and I was like, all right, I need to back off and figure things out again. So the gameplay loop of Elden Ring is a very good loop, and there's a reason why there's a reason why that game is as popular as it is. But I think that more people would find it to be a really satisfying game if they were given the tools to be able to pause that game whenever they want, because there's nothing, I don't think there's anything in the game that says, bring up your menu and then bring up the explanation menu that tells you how to do menu stuff, and that's going to pause. Like, it doesn't tell you that. And it's also like 28 button presses, maybe 6 button presses that you got to do in order to get there, when in that time your kid shoved a knife in the, you know, electrical outlet or whatever, which, you know, first off, cover your outlets, people, but you get my point. Anyway, I thought it was interesting, and a bunch of people, the usuals, jumped after Alana, and they were like, they were focusing on the wrong part of what she said, and it just drove me a little crazy, because I was like, there's no nuance in what these people are saying.
That's it. So a couple things to piggyback off of what you said. So first of all, you reminded me that thing where you come back to a game and you forget about stuff. I forget who, it was maybe a podcast or something, but like they mentioned how like they really should have like a last time on, you know, Horizon Zero Dawn. I would love that if it would just reintroduce me to the controls, where I was in the narrative, what, you know, maybe what the quest I just did was. That would be awesome. So please do that. Then the pause thing, Alana's conclusion at the end of that too, which again, right, like this lack of nuance is just almost malicious misconstruing of what she said, right? So her final conclusion was not, like the pause thing was such a minor thing, and she didn't even, as far as I could tell, like recommend that there should be a pause button. She was just explaining why some people want a pause button, right? But her final conclusion was that what they should do is a end screen of the game when you beat the game of like what you enabled and what you didn't, right? So like if you enabled the pause button feature, it would show that there. If you use summons, it would show that there. If you use mimic tears, it would show that there. And you can just share that as like your badge of honor. And that would go I agree with her, right? Like, because a lot of this, like, you're playing it the wrong way, you're playing it the right way, like, it wouldn't be removed, but it would be so much better to just be like, this is how I beat it. How did you beat it? No, you just show me how you beat it. This is how I beat it.
All right. Well, I'm going to play it again so I could see if I could do what you did, you know?
Exactly, right? Yeah. That would be cool.
It reminds me of the so when we were at Too Many Games, there was a Tetris tournament going on. They were playing on NES and CRT, and there's some guys who were like doing the whole like wearing gloves and doing the finger tapping and all that stuff. Other guys just playing it, you know. And it's like I can't imagine someone going up to one of them and be like, "You're playing it wrong." You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's they're playing it their way, and I think that's amazing.
Well,
yeah,
you know, they wouldn't
absolutely.
do that because they're in real life, and they wouldn't walk up to a person in real life when they're with no anonymity and, you know, attack them for the way that they play a game. But with the anonymity of the internet, they absolutely feel like, well, I can say whatever the hell I want. And sure, you can,
100%.
but you're still an asshole. You know what I mean? The other thing that people kind of latched onto is a lot of people were like, she's saying that having kids is a disability. She wasn't saying that. She was literally just talking about what is on like this thing from Microsoft, right?
Yeah. Yeah, she did. She wasn't addressing the thing from Microsoft at the time, but it's the same concept, right?
Yeah.
She is an accessibility consultant. That is an accessibility like rubric. So these are common accessibility terms that are used. So she didn't make this up, right? Like this is just something that exists. It's common language that Microsoft uses. She uses, and other accessibility folks use.
Yeah.
And she's not even a parent, right? Like, that's the other part of it. Yeah, she's not even a parent. I saw so many tweets who were like, oh, this lady just wants a pause button because of her kids. And it's like, she actually doesn't have kids. Like, she's just advocating here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Also, if you care so much about, like, you know, how people play the game, Miyazaki himself apparently uses mimic tears and summons. So, you know, like, he designed the game, right? And the last thing I'll say on that is that, like, not for this specifically, but like there's this just like we kind of just defer to the designer in a lot of ways. It's sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, right? Like it depends on the agenda. But what I'm trying to say here is that like sometimes it's okay to explore what a designer has not done, right?
Right.
And that makes you a better like designer if you strive to be in game design or any sort of design, right? So like my favorite example now is Russ, you playing Tecmo Bowl, right? Like the way you play Tecmo Bowl, you designed your way to play that. That's not to say it's for everybody, but like it's okay to explore that, right?
Yeah, it's a mini game that I created for myself that gives me enjoyment, and I'm sure the Tecmo Bowl guys didn't think of this
At all.
And they would all call you all kinds of names because of your 99-0 score.
Yeah.
You know,
Save
another good
states,
another good example of that is I'm not positive, but I think that the designers of Tears of the Kingdom looked at what weird stuff people were doing in Breath of the Wild, and they were like, "Whoa, this gives us some ideas," you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to a more emulation thing. I want to talk about. And first off, I want to say that Ambernick is not the only people that do this, because this happens way too much. But recently, Ambernick shipped whatever their new thing is of the week. I forget what it's called off the top of my head. I think it's the R something 35H.
40XX. 40XX.
40XX. Okay. Well, whatever it is, they shipped it, and it had 3 ports of modern games. And they shipped it to reviewers, and reviewers were like, what is this? And then the people who made the games, which was like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles what's the name of it? Shredder's Revenge.
Shredder's
Yeah,
Revenge.
the Shredder's Revenge and a couple other games, and the people who made those games were like, what the hell are you doing? And Anbernic has said, well, we won't do that. That was a mistake. We won't do that. And they said they're not going to do that. But this isn't just about Anbernic. This is about all of these companies that ship out stuff, and the end user gets an SD card full of like ROMs. That kind of stuff is going to kill that industry because Nintendo is going to sue them. Russ, how many times have you bought or had somebody ship you a thing and it came with like the worst ROM set possible, but it came with ROMs?
It's, 2 years ago, it was just standard. Everything, other than like Android devices, everything else would come with games. And they were always poorly organized. And, it's always hard to kind of articulate that in a video. So usually what I would say is something along the lines of, listen, they're so poorly organized and they've got all like half the ROMs are in Chinese versus English. It's just better just to make your own ROM library. Not even talking about like the whole legality part of it, and it's always been rough. And Anbernic has probably been, they're one of the companies that try to make it better for the customer, but still don't understand like copyright and that kind of stuff. Like, for example, one of my favorite examples is they at one point did start shipping with better ROM sets, but they had removed every mention of Mario. Any game that had the word Mario in it, they removed that game. And it was just like, they probably did a find in page kind of thing, removed everything, and then just put it all back. So all the Zelda and all the Kirby, all the other Nintendo IPs were there, but Mario wasn't. They thought that would protect them from any sort of lawsuit. Like that's kind of their level of understanding about how this kind of stuff works. And I think that this Portmaster thing, or the fact that they had these 3 ports on there, it was Shredder's Revenge, Celeste, and Stardew Valley, is another good example, because they like to show off that their devices are capable of playing those games, and they'll show it like for months now. They've been showing that in their like promotional materials, like, hey, look, and it'll even play ports, right? But then if you think about somebody who's just a brand new user and they're like, oh, I've heard these things can play games, they watch that YouTube video and they're like, okay, where's my Ninja Turtles? I got my handheld and there's no Ninja Turtles on it, And so I think that's probably why they thought, okay, in order to appease the customers, again, not even thinking about copyright, they were like, let's throw those games on there too. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Again, the wrong thing, and this is the first time. Like, so what they did is they uploaded a new firmware release or like a new software image for their devices and put it on their website and said, okay, download this 64 gigabyte thing. And sure enough, it had those games on there. And then they were planning on shipping it with this new upcoming device, which I still haven't gotten yet, but I think it's in the mail. And so I think that's probably the big issue here, is that they just don't think about, oh, wait, we don't own this stuff. Like, we shouldn't be putting it on there. You know what I mean? Like, they don't jump to that next conclusion until there's a big blowback like this.
Well, the idea that they went through and deleted the Mario games, I think kind of pokes holes in that theory that they don't understand. Clearly they understand. They understand enough that they're, trying to fly under the radar by removing the term Mario. But I don't know. They also reached out to me and they said, hey, it shouldn't be on review units in the future. It's not going to be, like, these ports are not going to be on the customer versions.
Right.
And I said, good, because that's a terrible idea. You guys should never, ever do that again. And they're like, yeah, we get it. But as I said before, they're not the only ones that do it. Almost every time you buy a retro handheld, it comes with some games. And like, that's how you get stuff shut down. And I just think it's a huge mistake. What do you think about that, Rich?
Yeah. There's the legality and the ethics of ROMs, right? Like just having Super Nintendo ROMs versus having ports of games that are on sale now. Those are just 2 completely different things, right? So even if you are okay with one, you just can't, like Celeste, like what we were just talking about Celeste, right? It's on sale right now for $2. You can go buy that for $2. There's no reason to have that game basically be pirated. So yeah, I think that's super uncool. It definitely sounds I kind of agree with you, Bill. It sounds more like they're asking for, they went into this looking to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. So that's on them. And like you said, there are others that do that too. So It sucks. I'm not a fan of it. The MIG
Yeah.
switch thing, was there something there? Like, was there? I didn't follow that story with MIG switch getting like shut down, but like, wasn't there something about piracy there too?
One of the distributors is getting sued by Nintendo, so not MIG Switch themselves, but like one of
Got
the
it.
storefronts they were using was got like a big takedown kind of thing. Another thing to mention, is like this. I would be very curious to see, you know, I don't think we have any of this data, but it would be cool to see, like, okay, someone who buys an Anbernic device, like, what level are they at in terms of, like, they just want all those games? Like, they just want it to come out of the box, turn it on, and start playing? Or is it the people that, like, watch my videos or whatever who want to, try a custom firmware, to want to try putting their own games on it, all that kind of stuff? Like, what is the balance there? Because I'll tell you, on Amazon, they have those, like, hard drives that are full of ROMs. And if you want to get 100,000 views on a video, make a video about one of those hard drives and talk about how cool it is, because it'll get picked up and it'll get all these views, right? But it's absolute piracy. You know what I mean? They even put on modern games and stuff like that. But the thing is, there's such a big audience for people who want that it will get all the views. And I watch channels who do that kind of stuff, and it's crazy, And so I'm always very curious to see, like, what level are people at where they're just maybe they're not thinking about the copyright issue either, or maybe they just don't care. There's a really hard thing for those Chinese companies where they also don't really care about copyright. They just want to kind of not get in trouble, but also they want to sell as many units as possible.
Right.
And so they try to find that balance, And I think Anbernic is now getting to the point where they're going to ship without games, but then still sell the cards. And so that's like their kind of middle ground, I think. And sure enough, if you were to buy like this next device that's coming up, I bet if you buy it with the card, it's going to have Ninja Turtles on it. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. They're still going to find a way to kind of get that to people. And it sucks, but that's just kind of part of their business model, which just doesn't make sense.
There was something else that you said that was interesting. Two things, actually. One thing that you said a while back is when sometimes these Android devices will come with emulators that are paid emulators that they have basically stolen and put on there. Not cool. But then, the idea that the end user will buy this device and then be like, where's my Ninja Turtles? Like, do they buy an Xbox and expect that every Xbox game is on there? Do they buy a PlayStation and be like, wait, this didn't come with Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War? What was going on here? I think that's kind of a strange, like, juxtaposition, putting like the modern consoles against the retro stuff.
Yeah.
Especially because the games that we were just talking about are not retro games.
Right.
Or,
yeah, it's just such a weird balance.
Or as somebody in our Discord chat, I can't remember who, I think it was Carrie, called it classic rock, which I was like, I love that description. So retro games are classic rock. Anyway.
One thing too is, so like, okay, talking about like the Anbernic Android builds that come with like the paid versions of apps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I made a written guide, I don't know, a few months ago, and it was for one of those Android devices. And I said, okay, first recommendation here, delete all of those apps and then get them legitimately from Play Store so that you can update them yourself, so you can give the developers money and stuff. I got some comments on that saying, I just deleted all these apps and now I have to rebuy them. You're costing me all this money. And I'm like, wait, hold on. Like, they were like, you just cost me money. And I'm like, no, more along the lines of that you should buy what has actual value and pay the value of that, and
also read.
Yeah, it's
like
crazy.
You said in the description, delete these and then rebuy them, because maybe you should switch it around in the guide so that you'll have to rebuy these, but delete them so that you can support the developers.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept where people are like, I got my, free thing, and how dare you take that away, kind of thing. It's like, I didn't take it away, I just gave you a recommendation, but okay.
Russ,
Correct.
You bastard, just taking my stuff.
Terrible.
Diabolical.
I know.
Let me commit crimes.
Yes, help me commit crimes. Anyway, so there you have it. I think that hopefully, me, you, Anbernic, everybody else that makes these stuff, these systems, I love that we have so many options for these systems. Please just stop shipping them with ROMs, because you're going to get sued, and then we won't have anybody to buy these things from.
Right, because it's the hardware we like, not the free software.
Exactly. We already have the ROMs that we want, that we ripped from our, cartridges that we bought all those, years ago. All right.
We could have a whole episode on ethics of retro game piracy, but what I think anyone would agree on is the distribution of those ROMs, right? Like,
Yes.
that's the part where it gets very illegal.
Yes, very much
Yes.
so. And also, hey, Meg Switch buyers, that distributor that got sued, I think Nintendo is asking them, I want all your customer information too. Careful. Anyway, let's move on, and I want to talk about this Steam controller with quotes.
Don't say it. I was going to say, people are going to get so mad.
They can get mad if they want. Hey, listen, comment down below that it's not a Steam controller for engagement. The HoriPad Steam, I believe it's called.
Yep.
First off, it's only available in Japan, which makes me very, very sad. This thing looks really cool, and I want to buy one real bad. I can't wait until something like this comes to the States. It has gyro. It's got capacitive sticks, so this is perfect for flick stick. Like Rich, this is the flick.
Right.
This is the flick stick
This is
champion
it. This
for
is the
you.
one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just move to Japan, I guess, if you want to buy one.
I've got to find a way to get my hands on one.
Yeah, same. It's got back paddles. I believe it only has 2 back paddles, but then it also has 2 buttons on the front. And first off, Rich, what's your thoughts on this controller? Pretend that it's coming to the States.
Yeah. So for me, it's a must buy, right? So specifically for Flickstick, there is no other controller that has capacitive sticks other than the Steam Deck. So would I trade in rumble, lack of trackpads, asymmetrical sticks? Would I do all of that just to get capacitive sticks? Yes, I would. Absolutely. Right. Like, I just cannot play boomer shooters on my TV, and I want to. So I would absolutely buy this. But what I would also point out too, and this is something that I didn't explain properly in my video, and I think that's part of why a lot of people complained about my video, and that I will explain better in my next video, is that I feel like this is a moment for Valve. There has never been a Valve or Steam licensed controller.
Right.
And this, I think, just marks the beginning, right? Like, it has a Steam button, it has a quick access button, it is natively supported in Steam input without needing to it was Valve and Hori working together in advance, as opposed to what usually happens is that someone makes an Xbox controller and then Valve shoehorns in support.
Yeah.
That's what normally happens. This time they work together, which is something that we on this podcast, at least, like the people that are the hosts, have heard rumblings about Valve doing in the past with Ioneo, right? Like, we've heard rumblings that they've tried to work with Ioneo to get it natively supported. Those plans fell through, but here it is happening, right? Like, the Valve did it. And so I expect that to happen more. And so when people say, why don't more third-party controller makers do trackpads? Well, it's because they can't, right? Like, it's not just not cost effective, but the only way to do it is to make a PS5 controller, because there was no way of making a Steam controller up until now.
Right.
So you either make a PS5 controller or you don't do trackpads. So this is a big avenue that's being opened up for third-party manufacturers. And I think we're going to see more Steam controllers, and I think one of those will hopefully have trackpads one day.
So let me ask you a question. When you are using trackpads on a device like this, let's imagine that we have trackpads on this. What is it that you specifically are using the trackpads for?
Me?
Yes, you.
We talked about this on the live podcast, right? Like, I've Bob Wolf kind of famously doesn't use the trackpads, and I looked at Bob Wolf and I'm like, I'm kind of where you're at now. So outside of I think 2 things I use the trackpads for. Number 1 is to calibrate flick stick, right? So I need to move the cursor somewhere so that I can now do my calibration. So I use trackpads for that. I feel like there was one more thing I use it for, but I don't remember. But yeah, not much. Menus. As a pointer in Wii emulation, it's perfect.
Yeah.
That's a great use case for trackpads. And then I will, I use whatever menus have been built in EmuDeck for like DuckStation and whatever the emulators are that have those touchpad menus. I use those for like save state and stuff. But even then, I prefer when there's the corded shortcuts, right? So like if I could press like, I forget what it is, but like start and R2 to save state and then start and L2 to load state, whatever it is, I prefer those over the touch menu.
So the touch menu is still something that you could do on this controller using Steam input. You could set it up because it has like two little buttons underneath. It's got a button underneath each stick basically on the front, right?
Yep.
So what you could do is you could set up a radial menu on, we'll say, the right stick that has like 12 different or maybe 20 different inputs on it, and that radial menu pops up when you press that button, and then you could use the right stick to select from those what am I thinking? If those
items in the
those
menu.
items in the menu. Thank you. So
Yeah.
you could accomplish that. And listen, I just going to interrupt myself by saying I am a huge proponent of the trackpads. Getting them on a controller along with the D-pad and sticks is tough, I think. So you could do it that way. And then as far as calibrating for flick stick, you could use gyro to line something up, then take your thumb off the thing. I think that this controller could be the closest that we're going to get to a Steam Deck. I've said a million times that I want everything from a Steam Deck, just remove the screen and put it together. As much as I want that, I think that most people don't care about that. What do you think about that, Russ?
Yeah, I only use. I'm kind of like Rich. I use the trackpads for menu navigation, desktop mode, stuff like that. I don't really play it when I'm playing a game. I appreciate that they're there, but I honestly, I would be okay with just one trackpad. I think for the most part, just having the right one there. Because I use it like kind of like just a mouse cursor. For the most part. So, yeah, I think this controller looks pretty neat. It's a shame because my wife and I are talking about maybe going back to Japan during fall break here, which is like 2 weeks before this thing comes out. So I wouldn't be able to grab it.
Do you have any friends over there?
I got a couple. Yeah, that's an option.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
Now I got to decide purple or white or black. Yeah, it's tough.
It's purple for me.
Yeah, I don't
But
know which color
that
I would
said,
want.
That said, I would take whatever anyone wants to send me. I've emailed Hori just in case, like, hey,
Oh, nice.
if you want to send me and you want me to do a review, I will do a review. Because I'd love to. There was one more, I forgot what it was. One more thing about this controller I was going to say.
Was it the lack of
lost
rumble? Because I know a lot of people are mad about that. I just don't
They're
care.
so mad about that. I don't. You know what really threw me off about that? I was thinking about this yesterday. Is that Steam Deck doesn't have good rumble,
No,
right? So like, it's terrible, right? So like, it was a little bit ironic because a lot of people in my comments are Steam Deck fans, so like they were all extremely mad about the lack of rumble, and I'm like, Steam Deck doesn't have good rumble. It kind of sucks. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
But,
Yeah,
I don't
like
know.
the Allies rumble better.
yeah, it's so much better.
Yeah,
That's actually why I thought of it. I was playing the Ally last night. Yeah.
I don't know. The way I think that whenever I'm playing on a PC handheld, I don't care about rumble. When I'm playing on my DualSense controller, that thing has like the trigger stuff that's going on that thing.
Yeah.
That stuff's crazy, and I love it. Like, I don't really like Gran Turismo 7 without the DualSense, the trigger feedback that you get when you're playing
I
that
can see that.
game. But most of the time, I just don't care about rumble. And I'm not saying that those people are wrong. I'm just saying, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the conversation that we had at the live show. Look for that in the future, everybody. Subscribe to see it. When we were talking about how all of the different handhelds, they all have like, it's perfect except for this one thing, and then you got this other thing that's perfect except for this one thing. And I think that what we could see in the future are a bunch of different Steam controllers, and for the audio listeners, I'm doing quotes, so don't yell at me, I don't care. Steam controllers where this one has the best rumble, this one has the best flick stick, this one has the best that, and based on what you like the best, that's what you get. So
Yeah.
Finding one that's perfect is going to be really, really hard to do unless you make it yourself, because everybody thinks different things are perfect.
I hope we get to the point where we are arguing about which one has the best rumble, because that means the bar is so high at that point.
Yeah.
We're not even talking about performance or screen. We're just like, well, this button's a little bit clickier than the other. Like those are the great places to be at. So I like that
For sure.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. All right, this was Go ahead.
One thing I was going to say, I remember what it was, and it has nothing to do with what we were talking about, but it does have to do with the controller. It turns out I don't like the menu stuff, like the radio menu.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're cool, especially when you're first getting started. But once I get to into a zone, especially with a shooter, what I like is, for example, weapons, right? Because that's the big example for radio menu. I just map 1, 2, 3, 4 to up, right, down, left, and 5, 6, 7, 8 to a double tap of up, right, down, left. So if I want to go to the pistol, I just press up. If I want to go to the fourth weapon or the fifth weapon, I'm pressing up twice, right? Like that sort of thing. So that, which is once we get into Steam input, right? Everybody is so different in this regard.
Yeah.
But I kind of skipping over the menu and just going straight to the thing I want.
So what do you do because what I like to try and do as much as I can is, for similar style games, I try and give myself the same layout, because I'm not that smart. All right, I'm a pretty face, right? All right? I'm not
Beautiful.
I'm not that smart. So remembering, in this game I got to do this, in this game I got to do that. What do you do when a game?
I hate that too.
Right. What do you do when a game has things that are on the D-pad that you need, but you usually will do the Steam input thing to the D-pad? What do you do in that case?
Why can't I think of a recent scenario where that happened? I try to avoid that too, right? So for example, one way that I try to avoid customizing each specific game is when I enable the back buttons, I never remap them. They're always ABXY, the way that Valve has mapped them. So and to me, it's not quite natural, the A and the B kind of thing. So I had to get used to that. But I also don't want to change it, even though I could, set up my own profile and I could do something there. So I just do ABXY the way that Valve has mapped it. But for the D-pad, I know that there are games out there like Flashlight, stuff like that. But for some reason, I can't think of a recent boomer shooter where I've needed the D-pad.
That's fair.
So I don't have an answer for you. Yeah.
So when you talk about ABXY and a command prompt comes up on screen that says press X. Right.
Exactly.
Do you think, I got to use the back panel, or are you good enough at this point where you're just you just automatically reach for the buttons on the back?
I am not all the way there, but I'm getting there, and that is exactly why I want to do that, right? So that when I see an X, my finger can just press that button.
Yeah. What game developers could do is they could use Steam input, and because Steam input will put the correct legend on the screen, and you could have it just pop up the back paddle button on the screen, and you'd be like, oh, that's the button I'm going to push, and it makes things so much easier.
Agreed.
Anything to jump in here, Russ, or do you want to move on to the next topic?
No, let's move on. I'm such a classicist when it comes to this stuff. I just want to play the game just regular old style. I don't know.
There you have it. Okay. So we were really hoping Kerry would be here for this, but he's not here. So he's not here to defend himself or yell at us for our thoughts. This was posted in our community, or in our private Discord, and it's basically one of those things where it's which pill are you going to take? Are you going to take the red one or the blue one? And you'd make that decision based on the games or the publishers or whatever happens to be listed below. So. For the audio listeners, I'm going to describe this real quick. The red pill is Capcom, Kojima Productions, and From Software. And the blue pill is Naughty Dog, CD Projekt Red, and Rockstar. And, for some reason, this got a lot of people talking. Rich, which one are you? And then we'll talk about this idea afterwards.
Yeah. So before I tell you which one I am,
Yeah.
I said this is the first one of these pill things I like, and it was funny because that was immediately a difference with me and Carrie, right? Because one of the reasons I like this thing is because I can delineate between these red and blues. So I'll give you my answer, and then I want to know if you guys like if the delineation is muddy to you, or if you can sort of see where the line was drawn. So my answer is, let me make sure I get this right, red pill, which is Capcom, Kojima, and From Software. Is that right?
Yeah, sorry. I guess I shouldn't have taken it off the screen on you. I'm a jerk.
No, you're good. You're good. So red pill. You could take one of these off and I would still vote for the red pill. Like if you took Kojima off of this, it would still be red pill for me. I just like that output from Capcom, Kojima, and From so much more than the naughty CDPR/Rockstar, which I love, all of the studios. I love The Last of Us. I love Cyberpunk. So these are all great games, but I just love the red pill side so much more.
Well, what about you, Russ?
I'm really torn. My first thought is like they're missing like the ones I actually want to vote on, like the studio, like where's Santa Monica, where's Square Enix,
Ooh, yeah.
More on that in a little bit.
Yeah. It's hard because so I look at the blue column, like Naughty Dog, CG Projekt Red, Rockstar. I think, okay, big epic games that take a long time to come out. So if we're talking, again, context too is like, okay, if we take this pill, does that mean all future releases, or does that mean like you only can play those catalogs? Like there's nuance to it. But if we're talking future releases, I feel like the red pill side between Capcom and From Software is just going to be a little bit more. You're going to eat better. You know what I mean? There's going to be so many more games you can play. Street Fighter, Ace Attorney, like whatever else is in Capcom. You know what I mean? Like there's just a lot of content there. I don't play any of that stuff though. Like I don't play any Capcom games that I can think of. Resident Evil games too scary for me. Death Stranding is like the last Kojima game I played, and man, that's just walking. And then Elden Ring is a game that and Elden Ring is a game that like I feel like I want to play it and I never do. Just I'm not ready to devote my life to it. And so I don't know. I can tell you I've played all the Naughty Dog games. I don't know. I think I would actually go blue pill in this one, just because of Naughty Dog. To be honest, because I'll play those Uncharted games. I will play Last of Us. And CD Projekt Red, like Witcher, is another game. I feel like it's on that same level as Elden Ring. Like I want to play it, and I just never get around to it. And so I'd probably go on the blue pill side.
You're definitely right that you'll eat better with the red side, right? So I think From Software has released Elden Ring, Armored Core 6, and Shadow of the Erdtree, right? And all in the span of time that I believe neither of those three studios have released anything. Well, I guess Cyberpunk got the Phantom Liberty DLC during that time.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But it's pretty close.
It's the equivalent to if you do the blue side, then it's the equivalent to a fantastic Thanksgiving meal, but that's the only thing you eat all year. And then on the red side, you just have a lot more stuff. I mean, just from Capcom. Like, I love Capcom. Capcom makes some of my favorite freaking games. So you could put all 5 of the other ones
of the other
on
studios.
the other side, and I would still pick the red side because I could not care less about Kojima stuff. Everybody always yells at me about that. I have no nostalgia for Metal Gear. I've never played any of the Metal Gear games. I'm looking forward to playing Metal Gear Delta as a newbie. I'm looking forward to that. But I don't care about Kojima stuff. I find most of his nonsense where he gets up on stage and talks about how much he wants to make movies, and him and whatever his name is at the Game Awards are always like wasting everybody's time. Here's
Jeff Keighley.
Yeah, Jeff Keighley. Here's 10 minutes of us talking about something and we don't know what the hell's happening. So I don't care about that. From Software, I bought Armored Core 6. I didn't really play it all that much. I thought it was cool, but it's daunting to jump into that. It's just too much. So I'm like, well, I'll do it some other time. I just keep pushing it off. Elden Ring, I probably got 40 hours in that game. It was really good. I really had fun with it. I did not come close to finishing it, and I probably never will, even though I played it a little bit this morning. Capcom, oh my God, you got Monster Hunter. You got Resident Evil.
That's right.
You got Street Fighter. Like, Capcom has so much stuff that I have to pick that side. Naughty Dog, I don't care. That being said, I loved the TV show of Last of Us. That was friggin' awesome. So I love that side. CD Projekt Red, I really liked Cyberpunk 2077, but again, it's a giant open world game, and every time I load it up, I'm like, I don't know what to do, so I just shut it back off. And then Rockstar, I just don't like Rockstar games. I don't like the way that they control. I know that they're good storytellers, but I don't like the controls, or at least the last time I played one, which was a long time ago, I'll admit. So it's easy for me.
The last time they made a game was a long time ago.
Yeah, that's true. So for me, it's easily the red side. But Rich, you mentioned the delineation. What did you mean by that? What's the delineation that you're talking about?
So Russ made a good point, right? Like that right side, that CDPR, Rockstar, and Naughty Dog, those are all like big games that will take a long time to make. I called them cinematic. And there is like, some of these studios have a little bit of column A, column B. And here's the one where I think it's divisive is I think that the red column is all mechanically dense games. Like a lot of people think of Kojima Productions or Kojima himself as like really staunchly in like the cinematic category. And you kind of mentioned it, I think, Bill.
Yeah, dude wants to make movies.
Yes. However, the difference between Naughty Dog and Kojima is that like Naughty Dog will take a movie, will make a movie and put it in a video game. Kojima will make a movie out of a video game. So like Metal Gear Solid 5 is an immersive sim. You know what I mean? Like like The Last of Us is not an immersive sim, right? Like we're not talking about like Jak and Daxter. Metal Gear Solid 5 is an immersive sim that happens to be very cinematic, right? Like he loves the movie part, he loves the storytelling, he loves all of that, but he also loves video games. He loves video game-ass video games, and he makes video game-ass video games. So like, I think like, we think back to like the Vita Metal Gears, right? Like Peace Walker, Metal Gear Acid, like these are just video games. They happen to be in this universe that he makes very like dense narratively as well, but they're dense mechanically, which I think is not missing from the other side because again, these are top of the line studios. It's just that one kind of leans more towards mechanics and the other side to me leans more towards cinematics.
Yeah, I remember commenting back when those PSP Metal Gear games came out was like, you got to press 4 buttons to shoot. Like, you got to hit this one, hold this one, and do that, and then you finally can shoot. Like, the games never stop reminding you that you're playing a video game. Whereas with Naughty Dog, it's like, oh, I'm just, I'm playing a movie right now, and that's one of the things I like about it. The thing is, the reason why I want to go back to Blue is because I feel like any of those games from any of those projects, like or studios, are a year game for me. Like that's my year. Like Red Dead Redemption 2, I would spend a year with that game. Like I know that, and that's probably one of the reasons why I can never get into it because I know how much it's going to take out of me. But that's great. Yeah. Like I could eat well. I'll have my Thanksgiving meal and all those leftovers for a whole year until the next one. And so I think I would rather be in that column than in the red one. It's such a hard comparison because I think if you're going to have Capcom on there, you need to have Ubisoft. You need to have EA. You need to have like those other ones that are pumping out a ton of games so we have all those franchises to choose from. But that's just me.
Yeah, and then we wanted Kerry to be on the show because he was like, I hate this choice, and I would love to hear why he hated that choice. But it gave me the idea is that I went through, and this morning I made a template, which I will make it available on the Discord. There'll be a link down below. I made a template that you guys watching or listening to this, or even you guys who are on the show, if you're you're looking for a good discussion topic, I've got this template that is basically the same thing, and you just put in your 6 choices. it could be developers, it could be consoles, it could be video games, it could be controllers, whatever it is that you guys want. And then you could share it with us, and we could have a discussion about it here on the show. So I'm going to make that available to people, and if they are looking for ways to give us that feedback, I also made an email address for the podcast. It's nerdnestpod@gmail.com. I'm going to repeat that one more time, nerdnestpod@gmail.com. And so you guys can send in your topics that you want us to talk about, questions for the show, or those little infographics that we can then put on screen and have an argument about, because that's always really fun. It's my least favorite thing is when everybody on the show agrees about everything. So make these things and send them in, and we'll put them on the show, and it'll be a lot of fun. Again, nerdnestpod@gmail.com. All right. Anything else before we move on? All right.
No,
this is
good.
too scary for Russ. So Russ, close your eyes. New Resident Evil game is confirmed, surprising absolutely nobody. But this
Nobody.
one, what's that?
I just said nobody.
Yeah.
It's surprising no one at all.
Yeah, but this one, is being directed by the director of Resident Evil 7. Now, my favorite Resident Evil so far is Resident Evil 4 Remake. I absolutely loved that game. I had an absolute blast with it last year. My second favorite is Resident Evil 7. My wife and I actually have some old live streams on my YouTube channel of my wife and I playing it, where she was sitting on the couch over on the other side of the room watching it on the TV, and she had like a pair of my wireless headphones on so that she could hear it, and I was live streaming it, and like we were screaming because I would be playing and something would scare her and she would scream and it would scare me, and it was a lot of fun. We ended up getting to a point in that game where we couldn't figure out where to go next, and we just never went back to it. But I had an absolute blast playing Resident Evil 7. Super, super creepy game. For the director of that game to be making the next Resident Evil game, I'm in 100%. I'm very excited for it. Russ doesn't like Resident Evil games, so I'm going to go to Rich. Rich, are you a Resident Evil fan? Did I say the wrong name?
No, you did.
Oh, okay.
We were just laughing at Russ being scared.
It's okay, Russ. You be scared if you want. It's fine. I find them scary
I'm
too.
I'm a big fan of Resident Evil games. Just like you, it's probably been a while since I've completed one, which is disappointing. But I love RE1, 2, 4, 4 Remake. I never played 7, but that's definitely one I really want to play. 8 seemed like, it was kind of picking up where 7 left off, and then it kind of, it didn't seem quite as scary as what I understood 7 to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I want to go back to 7. And so, yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this. Do we know if it's are there narrative threads from 7 to this one? Do you know if that's going to be a thing?
I don't know off the top of my head. I honestly, I hope not. I would prefer. I know that I don't care about the lore of Resident Evil.
Yeah.
I just want to go into a place and experience a contained story. And so I'm perfectly fine if it's completely contained. I know that Resident Evil 8 is following the same characters from Resident Evil 7. And that was less interesting to me. The thing about Resident Evil, and this is going to sound stupid because it is, Resident Evil 7 feels scarier because it feels more real. Whereas in Resident Evil 8, at the very beginning, you're like just freaking werewolves and shit, and giant ladies with coming after you. Resident Evil 7, when you play that game, especially the very intro, you're like, yeah, this could be a real thing, where you're like, there's some backwoods people that are kidnapping people and doing crazy experiments on them, or that kind of thing felt real, and that made it so much scarier. Of course, there's absolutely some supernatural stuff to it, but I felt like 7 is really, really good, almost too scary. Like that is, in my opinion, the scariest one. It also felt like a reboot to the series. So I'm not sure about that. It felt like, because up until then they were all third person, and then Resident Evil 7 said no, we're going first person, which made it way scarier.
Yeah, I felt like, I mean, I don't think you're alone in what you're feeling, right? Because without having played 7, that was the exact like notion that I got from the discourse, which is that from RE1 to 6, it just got more and more absurdist, and by the time 5 and 6 came around, especially 6, it just felt like it had lost the plot. And you know, some people are sort of relitigating that now, whether or not 6 was worth playing, but the feeling at the time was that 6 was just, it had gone way off the rails, and 7 brought it back to those roots of like, we want to scare you. So I think you're right that something that was more grounded, and you know, there was some supernatural aspect to it, but it was more grounded, especially in the beginning of it, is what led it to be sort of the phenomenon it was at the time.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the right thing to do when you decide to shut down your game. And it seems like Microsoft is doing the right thing for once, which I really, really like. So the issue with racing games is that what happens is these companies pay for the right to license, car A, right? And then when that license expires, because they've already got the next game on the market, they say, we're not going to pay to renew that license. And so they end up shelving the game and shutting it down, and you can't really play it anymore. If you already have bought it, then you can play it. But Microsoft, they did something really cool for people who played Forza Horizon 4 and bought DLC. So, you had this game on Game Pass, and you bought DLC for it. So you spent money on this game. Now, if you bought it or if you played it on Game Pass but didn't buy DLC, then this doesn't apply to you. So this is just for the people who played the game on Game Pass and bought DLC. Well, now they're shutting that game down. So what happens to the thing that you paid money for? Well, Microsoft is sending free Horizon 4 codes to Game Pass subscribers that played the game and purchased DLC. So basically, they will own the game because they bought DLC, and they'll still be able to play it, albeit offline. And I think that is fantastic, because we've seen so many times where games are just, nope, we're shutting it off, and you gave us your money, and that's too bad for you. And that drives me up the wall. Russ, what do you think about this?
I think it's a great move. Games come and go on Game Pass all the time, and I'm assuming that, if you bought DLC for that, then you're going to have to buy the whole game. So they're just going above and beyond with this particular case because the license expiring, and I think it's great. I worry that people are going to be like, well, I just bought DLC in this other game that got removed from Game Pass. Where's my free game? Like, it might be setting a precedence. It's just one of those things where you do something good, and who knows how it'll blow back, But I do think, just overall, this super cool move, And I never played 4. I played 5 a bit. But yeah, I think it's cool that they're actually still making that available for others.
Rich, what's up?
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. I think, as someone that does software development in my day job, it's hard to sort of plan for a graceful shutdown or something of that nature. But, we've seen it as something that is more and more in need, especially with live service games. So I'm happy to see that game developers are taking graceful shutdowns into consideration, and I absolutely want to see more of it.
Yeah, me too. It would be better if Microsoft could convince the car companies, or whatever it has to be, that it's a license to use it for that game in perpetuity. Not for the next game, just for this game. I'm licensing it for Horizon 4, and as long as that game exists, we have the license we don't have to renew our license for that game. That's the right way to do it. This is the next step down on that rung. Like, there's the first place winner, where it's just you license it in perpetuity and you never have to shut the game down. The next second place is what Microsoft is doing here, which I like a lot. So I appreciate that. All right, let's wrap things up. Before we talk about the videos that these guys have, I just want to let everybody know that if you want to listen to this show without any ads in it, then you could support us on Patreon, and there'll be a link down below. Rich, what videos have you been working on, man?
So a couple surprise ones, I hope. But the main video I'm working on is just another news video. I still have yet to talk about game recording in detail, so I want to talk about that. And then it's been a while since I did any sort of flick stick tutorial, and I've talked about it a bunch. And a lot of people have asked, can you do a tutorial on that? So I am working on a flick stick tutorial.
Very cool. Before I ask Russ the same question, you mentioned what was the first thing you mentioned before flick stick? Oh, the game recording.
News video.
The game recording, yes. So I was playing, I got my laptop hooked up to my TV over there, and I was playing Doom on there. And then it told me that I was running out of space. And I was like, oh, why am I running out of space? Well, it's because I was downloading a bunch of games, right? So I was like, oh, well, let me go in there and see what's on there. And so I started deleting some games. And then I looked, and I had my media. In my media section on Steam, the Steam Big Picture mode, in my media section, I had recordings of me playing Doom, filling up my hard drive space, because I turned it on and I forgot to turn it on. Now, it's just 2 hours, and it deletes after you go for a certain amount of time, but I forgot that it was there. Like, I had turned on that feature, and I forgot that it was there, and so now I have all this footage of a gameplay of this game, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I could load that up and find some cool moments if I want. It's very cool that you can turn it on and just forget about it and have it record in the background, and it'll take up X amount of your hard drive. Yeah. If you have plenty of hard drive space, then you don't have to have anything to worry about. Russ, what have you been... go ahead, Rich.
I was just going to say, speaking of cool on the game recording, this is obvious, but I don't know, when you realize it, it's also cool. Game recording just works on the Ally X, right? Like, you just enable it and it works.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works on every PC, essentially. It's fantastic. I love what Valve did there. Russ, what's your next video, your last video?
So I'm in a weird spot where I got no huge handhelds like that I got to work on right now. I'm sure that'll change in a few days. But so I've been trying to go through my back catalog of things that I've just had stacked up. I've taken on a new stance where if a company says they want to send me something, I say, you can send it, but there's no guarantee that I'll make a video just because it's just too much, And so I went, as soon as I got back from too many games, I sat down and I was like, all right, let me pull out all these boxes and see where I am. And I listed off 14 things that needed videos, that needed reviews. And I was like, that will take me an entire month just to get through that backlog. And so I kind of picked and choose which one I wanted to talk about. And so my last video was about a mini PC that I wasn't so hot on, but it just gave me a good opportunity to just kind of talk about what makes a good mini PC and what doesn't, and why this one didn't hit that mark, And then now I'm working on this controller. It's called the Scuff Nomad. Let me see if I can get it to focus.
Oh yeah.
I can't get it. It's an iPhone controller. Mm-hmm. Interesting is it's Bluetooth, but it doesn't work with Android. It only works with iPhone. I don't know what protocols they had to sandwich in there to make it so limited, but basically it only works on iPhone, but it's got the thumbsticks are above on both sides, so very kind of like Wii U, Steam Deck kind of feeling. Very, very comfortable. Not super compact, but just interesting. I'm using it as an opportunity to make a whole video about what iPhone gaming is like right now. I could have made a 10-minute review of this and be like, oh, the buttons work, but I was like, let's actually talk about the platform, what it's like, So I went through and was just playing how are all the ways I can play games on an iPhone now that we have emulation, now that Netflix is pumping out the best games that you can think of, and how is Apple Arcade doing? Yeah, The Witness.
Not The Witness, Braid. I was going to say Braid.
Oh, Braid. Yeah, Braid's on there now. Hades is on there. It's crazy. Yeah. And so I'm going to make a whole video just kind of what it's like to game on iPhone right now, and that'll be my next video. It was supposed to be a quick 10-minute video, and now I've spent 3 days on it. So
I'm going to give you a little bit more time to spend on it, Russ, because Resident Evil 7 I believe, is on iOS. So you could pick that up. I think there's a demo. So you could do like the very beginning and then try not to throw your controller, because that's a $1,200 throw because it's your phone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so I did that, but with 4 Remake, because that's on there too. And same thing, you can play through a point and then you got to pay. And so I've got a segment talking about that. I actually don't mind playing Resident Evil games on my phone. I don't know if it's just because I can like easily turn it off and then go watch Netflix or something. I don't know what it is, but it just makes it a little bit less scary. So
when I played Resident Evil on my phone, I think I was doing an ad for Backbone, I believe, and I mean, it worked fine. But man, your phone does get really hot when playing those games. It would be nice if Capcom would say, "All right, I can turn down some of this stuff so that my so that my phone is not just like blazing hot from running these games."
Part of it for me is that I turn the screen brightness all the way up so I can see things, because they're such dark games. You know what I mean? And so that also makes your phone really hot too. And so I think it's a contributing factor.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's going to do it for us today on the NerdNest podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. You could have spent an hour and a half anywhere. You decided to hang out with us, and for that, I definitely appreciate it. Again, if you want to check out Rich's stuff, you can head on over to youtube.com/fanthedeck. If you want to check out Russ's stuff, you can go to youtube.com/retrogamecore, and I am at youtube.com/nerdnest. Links to everything down below that like button. Thanks for hanging out with us, and I hope you stay rad, everybody. Bye-bye.